Hello, I'm Toycat, and living in London, you're only ever about 2 hours away from France, and the reason that most people don't go is, well, the people, but at least they're confined to the hexagon, right? Wrong, actually. 4,000 miles away, there is this, Martinique in the middle of the Caribbean, and unlike most other territories in the place, this isn't actually a territory at all. This is just full-fat France. They have the same president, they use the same currency, drive on the same side of the road, use the same license plates and laws, and everything else about this makes it a part of France. But that raises the question, French McDonald's is the best in the world, right? And so if this was really France, they would also share exactly that. This has brought me on a bit of a fact-finding trip, and so, let's find out.
And the best place to explain that is back in the studio where we have Google Maps and the McDonald's corporate reports that explain to us exactly what countries they group together, because although officially there are just under 200 countries on planet Earth, a lot of countries are very, very similar, and a lot of countries contain lots of very different places that function entirely separately to one another. I think the easiest examples we can bring up are the 5 UN Security Council members who have a permanent veto. In other words, the winners of World War II, they all have nukes, and they all get away with some questionable stuff, like, let's be honest, invading your neighbor and saying, look, we found 4 new provinces that will have special, I guess, rights and responsibilities as part of our republic. You can't do that if you're a normal country, but if you have the nukes and that UN Security Council vote, I guess you can. It's actually 5 if we count Crimea, but that's a different point for a different time. And the same is true for China. China has Hong Kong and it has Macau. They have their own flags, they have their own currencies, they have their own legal systems, and ultimately, to the outside world in every sense of the word, for example, me visiting, I can go to Hong Kong for up to 6 months without a visa. I can't go to China without a visa at all. And if I do manage to get like a transfer visa, it lasts for about 3 to 7 days, I think, depending on the city. And so and I think I'm not allowed to leave the city that I fly into. China has a lot of strong restrictions on me, but Hong Kong does not. And indeed, Hong Kong has its whole own functioning economy with separate companies and separate ways of doing business. But despite that, we call this China because China says it, and we have to be real easy. This is something that happened with airlines in Taiwan. China insists that if you're talking about this place right here, you better refer to this as Chinese Taipei, and you put it under the China country field. And so websites generally will just do that, despite the fact that they'll treat Taiwan as a very different market, and they'll even treat Hong Kong as a very different market, because they literally are, right? So the easiest example to bring up also after this, if we want to be like, oh, let's point some fingers, is everyone's down for a little moment of like, hey, doesn't the US own a lot of weird stuff? Here is a map of places that the US owns in the Pacific. It's crazy just how much of the Pacific is owned by them. But also, if we talk about former territories around the world, the United States owned a lot of places that you could not in good conscience call the United States. Even by the time you're including Hawaii, Hawaii does things so differently to the rest of the states, but that is a full state, and then there's territories, and then my point here is to say that if you are in Puerto Rico, where Spanish is the national language, things are different, even if legally you're in the US, and it gets even crazier by the time you get to the European Union, which we'll use to simplify the UK and France into one place, because so yellow stars here represent overseas countries and territories, which are the outermost regions, like they're outside of the EU, I guess we could say, because Greenland is legally speaking Denmark, but it's not actually Denmark, and that's what makes this tweet about 5% less unhinged than it could otherwise be, because this isn't, a president saying he's going to annex a part of another country. It's a president saying they're going to annex an overseas collectivity of another country, which is somehow slightly less bad in the public consciousness. But yeah, this is Greenland outside of the EU because of a vote that they did. Every yellow star represents a place that is outside of the European Union, especially for all the British territories now, whereas Madeira is so close to Europe and follows the VAT rules and all the other things, and so is part of the EU. And interestingly, you can see here, we've got a lot of blue stars, notably Réunion and Mayotte over here, but even more bizarrely, we've got Guadeloupe and Martinique, both in the Caribbean alongside St. Martin, and all officially a part of the European Union. This means that even though, as far as France is concerned, they're not just like, oh yeah, this isn't just a place we own, it is a thing that they fully consider to be part of France. In the legislative elections, and indeed the presidential elections, if you look closely at the map on the right here, you can see all of those islands that were on that previous map, like indeed here is Martinique, and you can see that they officially got to vote, and they elected, what is that, like 5 deputies to the National Legislative Assembly. I have so many questions about how that works on like, so like, you know, if they do they have to fly back and forth every time? You know, there's all sorts of wild things that would happen here, but basically they elect a full parliament member. But even though France says very strongly, by the way, also, we forgot to mention, but in the bottom right here, this entire France overseas place, French elections are wacky because France insists that it has no such thing as colonies, because colonies are bad. Instead, it just has very far away bits of France. That's why the largest national park in the EU is in South America, because this is just France. It's not French Guiana, it's France/Guyana. Anyway, the point here is that Martinique falls under the exact same thing here, but is Martinique really a part of France? I think we look at the economic report. So in the same way, if you look at the McDonald's corporate reporting, they group the world up into markets, and they generally do this by country, even for places that are quite close together. So the Czech Republic and Slovakia, despite being so culturally similar and literally being combined until 24 years ago, they're separate markets because, you know, there are some differences between the Czech consumer and the Slovakian consumer, and that is kind of wild. Even Canada, with its huge differences, it's all one market, right? However, interestingly, they do then say with these A, B, C, D, E, and F flags that some countries are grouped together. So, for example, if we look at France, they group into France, which is C as the note here. It includes Monaco. Monaco, even though it's legally not France, it's just where you go if you are, you know, trying to be, you know, living that French Riviera lifestyle, but don't want to pay taxes. So France includes Monaco. Monaco McDonald's is just French McDonald's, and like, you know, it's a legally different country, but they just include it to be simple. Similarly, if you look at Spain, what I think is interesting is that Spain includes so this is Spain with D, and this is the UK with F. So Spain includes, fascinatingly enough to me, Gibraltar, kind of a political statement, but also Andorra under the exact same logic. It says DL there, I wonder what that means. And then we can see that we've got the UK, which includes the Isle of Man, Jersey, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Interestingly, even though legally speaking Gibraltar is a part of the UK, or owned by the UK, the Isle of Man and Jersey are not part of the UK or even owned by the UK. They are owned by the Crown, which means they're the King's personal possessions. And so to claim that these are part of the UK is wild. But also, you know, like McDonald's is being real here. They're taking the exact same stance. You know, when you're trying to say like, is Monaco a sovereign country? Legally, yes, but also like, really, you know, are we gonna say this is actually so different to the French suburbs that surround it? I'm gonna say no. And so similarly, you know, McDonald's is saying, yeah, the Isle of Man, I know it's its whole own separate thing, but it's included, okay? It's just included. Similarly, and so as a result of that, you can see like, what I think is the most interesting example here, though, is if we go to the United States, this is McDonald's biggest market, about a third of their restaurants are there. Interestingly, they only opened 13 restaurants between 2022 and 2023. They haven't put out their 2024 reports yet, but you can see a lot, in some countries they're growing small, in some countries they're shrinking, like Austria over here, and in some countries like the US, they're staying about stagnant, but the United States includes, interestingly enough, Cuba. Cuba, Guam, and Saipan are included, and this blew my mind because a United States company is not allowed to do business with Cuba whatsoever, and so do you want to know where that restaurant is located? I think you really want to know where that restaurant's located. How is it that there is a Cuban McDonald's restaurant? And the answer, it's everyone's favorite thing. That's right, if you want to go to McDonald's in Cuba, this is the place to go. There is a McDonald's in Guantanamo Bay, and legally speaking, this is a part of the United States. Oh wow, looks pretty cool though. I need to go check out the McDonald's over here. Does anyone know how I could get to this place easily? There's not any like easy flights. Is there like a fast track method that I could use to get to Guantanamo Bay? Anyway, the hours may be incorrect. Let's read the reviews. We've got torture, escape room. Either way, amazing atmosphere, best escape room ever. Anyway, the important thing here, got tortured, but I had a McDonald's. Yeah, my point here is to say that restaurant, because it's on a US military base in a country they can't do business with, is legally considered part of the US. And so what does France include? You notably might have noticed it doesn't include Martinique. But then, where is Martinique included in? It's not included in the US, despite being one of the only places with a McDonald's in the region nearby. And the answer is, if we slide through here, you can see, interestingly enough, that it counts it as its own unique country in Latin America. Whereas some countries get grouped together, Puerto Rico gets to be its whole own place. Again, I feel like McDonald's is taking the very reasonable stance here that Puerto Rico is a part of the US, but you can't treat it like it's the same market, even though they can treat Cuba and Saipan and Guam as the same market. But even more interestingly, you can see that we've got Guadalupe over here, and even more interesting than that, we've got Martinique with 10 restaurants. And so that means that officially Martinique McDonald's, despite being French McDonald's and voting for the French president and being in a French country with all of the weird French traditions, I think that means that Martinique's McDonald's is going to be different. And so this is the test. If I go to Martinique and I'm not blown away by the quality of the McDonald's, I think we can say that this isn't really France. And so that's what the test is about to be. Because if you're curious, I looked online. I wanted to, I really did. This is the McDonald's France/Switzerland menu. Apparently they share a menu. I couldn't get it to only show me McDonald's France menu. As you can see, notably the quarter pounder is still called the Royale cheese, but I couldn't find any of the special items that I fell in love with when I last went to a French McDonald's. I can only see basic ones here, but rather than taking the Google word for it, I'm going in person. I'll be honest, this is the only place that I'm heading to on this trip that isn't... let's go to McDonald's over there.
Okay, my trip from the UK to America to France has brought me to McDonald's, which miraculously enough on the inside does look like any European McDonald's. On the internet, it looked like genuinely it might have like a sadder version, but most of the major burgers, including interestingly the big exciting one, the blue cheese bacon, are in fact found here, and that is astounding to me. Also astounding is the fact that it has that same weird McCafe being separate to the rest of the McDonald's. Oh look, there's a fun pigeon over there. Look at that one. He's like silver. You see him, right? Yeah. It's an interesting bird. They have some weird pigeons here. Welcome to McDonald's Review, France edition. I can't say I've eaten from McDonald's in an additional country now, but I can tell you, unlike in mainland France and the rest of the world, these fries are horrifically overcooked. I think they're still delicious, but they do not taste the same. They're not made from that. You know, these are not craveable. These are just chips. These are sauce vessels. If I had some mayo or some ketchup, I would be using it. Something you don't usually need to do for McDonald's fries. Also interesting, the drinks seem to be mostly the same, except there's this weird orange and passion fruit one that wasn't labeled very well. Same with the iced tea. There's a lot of odd things about this. And how does this taste? Oh, actually very good. Oh, there are some drinks that just taste better in like hot, humid climates, and I think this must be one of them. This is so good. It's like so sugary, so refreshing. So good, honestly. But yeah, the fries, surprisingly enough, kind of a letdown, but the real question as to whether it's a real McDonald's or not, it's not based on the vibes, it's not based on the menu, which by the way, is different. It has a lot of the same items on it, but then it's missing some crucial ones. So the menu is missing veggie nuggets, for example, which are currently available in France. It's missing the concept of salads altogether. You might recall I did a Swiss road trip where I ended up at a French McDonald's and ate their 20 € salad, but it was such a good 20 € salad. No option for that over here. There are 0 salads whatsoever. There's an option on the menu for it, but they don't fill it in. There is not a single veggie option at all on the menu. Everything is fish, beef, or chicken. I'm pretty sure there's no pork of any form, but that is very, very interesting by itself. And so, yeah, that means that this is a more limited option at effectively a higher price. The VAT rate here is 2% for fast food. I mean, you can see on my receipt here, 0.32 euros of that is VAT, sales tax for my non-European inclined viewers, whereas in France it's 10%. So in effect, I am paying more, and so far I've gotten a worse service. But what about with this, the granddaddy of burgers? Oh, it just looks like a Big Mac. I paid 15 euros for this. It better be worth it. This better be French McDonald's good. My favorite country so far, by the way. It's solid. It's absolutely solid. The beef, it's got that like kind of, you know, weird McDonald's flavor to it, but then there's a bacon that's coming in there. And it's not fast food bacon, it's decent bacon. Really good. Yeah, so there is no blue cheese at all on my blue cheese burger. It's a very, very decent burger. But so there's two things we can conclude from this. McDonald's here is effectively more expensive. It's the same price, but less of it goes to the government, so therefore it is a higher price. But that's a kind of debatable thing about how taxes and marginal consumption works. So it's a higher price, and everything's just a little bit worse, besides the drink, which is substantially better because of the climate. Is this French McDonald's? Well, I think for something to be French, it has to be substantially worse in most ways, and then also speak an incomprehensible language and pretend that there's no English. And on that level, honestly, yeah, I think it is. But on an actual France to here comparison, you do lose some things in the free Martinique stores, and the fact that these even exist as one of the very few places in the Caribbean where you can get McDonald's is fascinating. There were people who came from the boat, staff with like staff passes, who came to this McDonald's presumably because it's the one port in the entire area where you can expect to actually get McDonald's, and that is fascinating to me. But yeah, as far as this video goes, nah, not French McDonald's. It's like a clone of French McDonald's, but really it's a wider point about how this island is so wealthy by being France. This is a weird echo of France, where somehow France has used their political will to make it, you know, to have a French vibing McDonald's, to have French vibing roads and French vibing cars and business, and the language here being French. France pulling that off and calling this place France it's honestly amazing. It proves to me that with enough political will, you can ignore geography. If you're willing to spend the right amount of money and make the right political decisions, you can say, yeah, that place that is 4,000 miles away, next to the world's largest economic military superpower, and miles away from you, you can say, nah, that should be a part of us and have nothing to do with them. It's not American McDonald's. There's very little American influence in general, and the fact that that can be true just kind of blows me away a little bit. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. For me, it was an excuse to write off some McDonald's. Yeah, you better believe that's the real purpose of this video. These 15 euros, I ain't paying tax on that. I'm gonna stop taking big bites of the burgers between my thoughts. But yeah, I had a great time regardless, and I am still... I've got to stop taking big bites of burgers between thoughts in these reviews. But yeah, a rare second channel McDonald's review. I hope you found it interesting, and if you have, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. I'm just kidding, second channel, don't care. Except for the business expense, also for the boat ride here, which was maybe 200 times more expensive. Anyway, with that said, isn't that crazy actually? To buy a McDonald's burger is 1/200th the cost of an international cruise ship for 2 people, and all of the food for 10 days, and entertainment, and all the cruise shipping fees, and international. Man, economics is weird. Anyway, speaking of things that are weird, this video, thank you for watching it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.